Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their successes, become inspired, and meet the people to make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reese On, along with my co-host, Christian Webb, who actually is not the one that messed me up this morning. It was totally me.
I'm very helpful.
Yeah, excellent job. Thank you, sir. And today, we are accompanied by Gary Frey, although it is spelled like Frey, and we've had a 5-minute long conversation about it. We were very confused about it.
That's true.
It is. Gary, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
And putting up with our antics up to this point. I can't wait for the show. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Well, I wasn't going to come if it wasn't going to be fun.
Well, you know, we're gonna do.
So don't disappoint me.
All right. No hang on. Let me get in on this coffee again. We'll start over. So, author of a book, owner of businesses, proprietor of F3, and all of the above things, and
Owner of a son that also owns businesses.
I don't think you own your children anymore. But
I definitely don't own my children.
Yeah. Father of a son. That it is what it is. So do we want to start on business, books, or F3? I'll leave it up to you.
Man, it's podcast host choice.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Let's start with this awesome book.
I want to start with the book. Show the camera. Make sure, and I'll make sure it's in sync. Hang on. Let me see. Oh yeah, dude, looks great. So we were commenting about before the show. And sorry, we have to repeat ourselves here, Gary. But we were talking about the cover. So how did you design that? Like talk to us through the cover, and then talk to us about the book.
All right. Well, this cover, I actually did this for each of my grandkids. I've got 4 grandkids too. They're like, Papa. They got to actually see the first edition of this. Like they got the first copy off the press.
That's the $1 million copy.
Yeah, which is really cool, and it's probably got chocolate milk spilled all over it.
Yeah.
Crayons and whatever.
Torn corners.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And the dog is probably eating it already by now. But yeah, so I had struggled with what am I going to do on this cover. I knew I wanted to name it "Silence the Imposter," and so I'd seen this anonymous mask, and I thought, that's pretty cool. But it's like, it can't be you can't hide all of you. So it's like, what do you do to silence it? So I just took a photo in my office, got some harsh lighting on the side, right? And then I've got this very expensive free app called Snapseed that I can composite photos on, and I use these very intricate tools called fingers, and I'm moving it back and forth, and then I'm jumping up the saturation and dropping the warmth down, so I'm getting blue, and boom.
Yeah, saved yourself a couple grand.
There it was.
Oh yeah,
there it was.
And
there's your next business. You can start a book cover design.
Covers.
Yep.
As a former designer, I don't want to design anymore, but you can't take the design out of a guy. Once you've been trained to think that way, I think very critically in that visual realm. And so when I was talking with a number of publishers, I'm like, this is non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. This cover and this title is non-negotiable because I know it's right. I just know it's right. And I've designed books before for some folks early in my career. And so anyway.
So what made you write that?
Yeah, that was my next question.
So I'm glad that you asked that. I didn't even know the term imposter syndrome until a few years ago, but I suffered from it ever since I was a kid. Like perfectionism. Kids teased me when I was much younger, as a probably sixth, 7th grade. They called me Mr. Perfect. I'm like, I was the oldest kid, and I was always trying to be perfect, and as a designer, I wasn't a designer, but I was drawing a lot, and so you see the imperfections, and I would see commercials, and I'd go, oh, that's what normal is. And I think part of, my dad lost a leg to polio when he was 17.
Wow.
And so, and he was an overachiever, he was an entrepreneur, and he's an educator. And this little railroad town that I grew up in, 16,000 people in Kansas, and holding.
And holding.
and holding. Yeah, it's not growing. My dad, we'd walk down the street, and a lot of people knew him because he was an educator, and he was a really Mr. Holland's Opus kind of a thinker. but he's dragging a leg, limping down the road, and people would stare. And so as a kid, my prayer was, could we just be normal, whatever that was? So I was in this pursuit of normal. Well, that's, you see commercials, and then being a designer early on in my career, I worked with the guys that did all the Pizza Hut pizza poles. They had the Pizza Hut oven and all that. And
you worked with my heroes? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, with your heroes. But
back to those arms.
when we would do these pizza shoots, they would use all these chemicals and all these things that were unedible, but they looked real, but they weren't.
And super appetizing too. Like,
it looks fantastic. And like you're shooting all day and you can't eat any of this stuff because it's toxic.
Yeah.
But I was still pursuing that ideal, I think. And, I'm also a college dropout. Well, I was the only one at Bank of America that I knew, certainly an SVP, and everybody that worked for me, or most of them were masters. And every job I had was master's preferred, bachelor's required. So I couldn't talk about that, Now, I didn't lie to get in there. They targeted me, and they circumvented the HR process. But still, all these little secrets, like, you got to hide those things. So that's where the mask comes from. And then the light bulb came on. Tana Green is one of the most accomplished CEOs I've ever worked with, coached, or known. And if she hasn't been on your podcast, she needs to be.
Get her on here.
Yeah.
We'd love to have her tomorrow.
So she was, well, maybe not tomorrow, but
I'm sure.
She was one of the first people on our podcast, the Anything But Typical podcast, 4 years ago. And about 3 years ago, we were talking, and she says, Gary, I don't know what I'm doing. Now, you have to understand, she had, at the time, 10,000 W-2 employees. 10,000.
Oof.
She now has 12,000.
What's she do?
She owns a company called My Work Choice, where they split an 8-hour shift into 2 4-hour shifts for people that are like dock workers or working in logistics, like Amazon fulfillment places or whatever. So they are her employees, and she's, so it's kind of a low skill
in spots.
Right. She did the same thing in truckers. She sold that company. And I said, well, Tana, why would you say you don't know what you're doing? She said, I only have a 2-year secretarial degree. And I said, Tana, you run circles around pretty much every CEO I know that has advanced degrees. She's really good, very purpose-driven. And I said, you know what that is? I think that's imposter syndrome. And she said, yeah, you're right.
And when was this? You said it was about 4 years?
About 3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay.
Yeah, people literally already doing it well, second-guessing their ability to do it well.
Right.
And then, so I'm a pattern seer, so I see patterns. And I started thinking about it. The first guy I brought in as a client to BGW, the CPA firm that I'm a partner in, he has 3 companies. He ought to be on your podcast, too. He has 3 companies.
Fuel 'em up, baby.
Yeah, I'll fill you up. He has 3 companies, and he only works 10 hours a week.
What?
And he's in his 40s, early 40s.
That reminds me of my buddy Rich.
Yeah,
Porter.
Rich. That was the first thing I thought about.
Like, holy moly.
Those people, I love hearing their stories. The fact that they can somehow delegate multiple businesses so well that they can work 10 to 20 hours.
10 hours. And, like, he's one of the few entrepreneurs, like, a lot of the, I've known a ton that have done extremely well. Most of them are not golfers because they didn't build their, most of the golfers are corporate sales guys or corporate execs or whatever, but not those guys. But he loves golf, and that's even his Brent Loves Golf or something like that. BrentGolfs.com.
That's his headline. That's his headline. Yeah.
Well, and that's his email signature. It's funny. So I like he just loves golf.
Whoa. We need to expand on that a little bit. So like in his email signature, it just says Brett loves golf.
Yeah, it's Brent Golfs.
That is the funniest thing.
@gmail.com.
That is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Hold on, I need to expand on that a little bit, because could you imagine he's sending like an angry email or something, right? And he's like, why didn't you get this done? You were supposed to get this done a week ago. If that happens,
From Brett Goffs.
Yeah, from Brett Goffs. That is the funniest thing I ever heard. Okay, please continue.
He wouldn't be that way though. But
Yeah.
And he told me the same thing.
Yeah.
And he said, but I really don't know what I'm doing. I said, Brent, why would you say that? Same thing. I don't have any advance. I never went to college.
And he's literally the star of entrepreneurs.
I know.
Like if you ask entrepreneurs what an entrepreneur is, it's somebody who can build a business and also delegate it so they don't have to run it.
Exactly.
They gotta build a business
I'm like,
themselves.
dude.
Yeah.
But humble. But this feeling less than and always chasing. And then I was like, man, that has been my story too. And all of these, so I have coached a lot of CEOs since like 1998. I have worked with a lot of CEOs. We had 300 ultra high net worth families that were all entrepreneurs or CEOs of Citgo Petroleum and like some big boys, right?
Yeah.
The ones that dropped their guard with me, same thing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in over my head. I'm really not that good. Hey, I was just lucky. I had a lot of really good people around me. Oh man, I can't let people know this or that about me. All of those things are right in this whole thing with imposter syndrome. So then I thought, I got to do something about this. So I just started writing my story, which is in the back half of the book.
Yeah.
But then I got done with it, and I was like, I don't want this to be about me. I really don't. And my story, might be interesting to my kids and my grandkids, but anybody else, I'm not sure. But then I started seeing these patterns, and I thought, oh, these are the things that have helped me, stop it. Mm-hmm. So one of those weapons is shine a light on it, admit it, talk about the stuff you don't want anybody to know. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's terrifying. That's actually terribly courageous. And that was, Tana Green actually did that. So she's the only one that I mentioned in my book by name. I didn't use any of the companies, because it's like, what's the point? And I've been through partner embezzlement. I ain't gonna destroy his name. He's passed away now, but still, I'm not gonna do that. So, but she's named, and also Ben McDonald, my co-host on the podcast. She wrote a book called Creating a World of Difference. It's really good, small little book, but she talks about stuff that she could not talk about with anybody else, and she's in the WPO crowd, Women's Professional Organization. That's a pretty elite hobnobby group. Mm-hmm. Things like
that's great.
Hobnobby group. That's a technical term from Kansas. You can use that.
Straight from Kansas.
Very, very technical.
Yep.
But she had a child at age 15 out of wedlock. Not something you want to talk about here in the South. She gets married, has the baby. The guy beats her up, puts her in the hospital, and abandons her and the kid. Again, not something that you want to share with other people as you're trying to prove yourself as you're building a company.
True.
So she goes back to high school 2 years later. She didn't want to do a GED. Nothing wrong with that. My dad actually started a GED program for over-the-road truckers, first one in the world to ever do that. Kind of cool. But she didn't want to do GED, so she goes back. Think about the humility required for this. You're going back 2 years behind your graduating class with a baby on your hip, so you can finish high school. So then she can only afford 2-year secretarial degree. She wanted to go to college, but that's all she could afford. She put a spotlight on it, but it took her a long time, but she did it in that book, and that was another really inspiring moment for me. I'm like, man, this lady put a spotlight on it. And I said, Tana, what was that like? She goes, Gary, it set me free, and it set a whole bunch of other people free. That was the point. So I had these 6 weapons, and I went to Jeffrey Gitomer, who's a friend. He was our number one columnist when I ran bizjournals.com. 41 business journals across the country. It was a column called Sales Moves. number one, like nothing else was even close. And he's, people either love him or hate him because he's F-bombs about every third word. Not my style, but I really like this guy. And he's a 5-time New York Times best-selling author. So I go, Jeffrey, I had this manuscript done a year ago in August. It took me a year to write it. And I said, would you read this? Because I knew he would be really, just blunt with me. Like he would say, this is a piece of blah, 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 blah. You're an idiot. Don't have anybody read it unless your wife and children and kids and grandkids don't, but maybe they shouldn't even read it. That's what I was expecting from him. And he didn't even know what the term imposter syndrome was either. So he goes, hold on just a minute. So he calls his wife, Jen. He says, hey, Jen, have you ever heard of this thing, imposter syndrome? Because he's a pretty self-assured, Brooklyn boy, like he's hard charging. And he's a super successful. And she goes, oh, Jeffrey, I was just coaching a woman, and she was driving back from their place in Charleston. I was just coaching a woman. She said, Jen, I think I've got imposter syndrome. She goes, it's so big. He goes, really? Okay, thanks. Bye. He goes, hold on. He calls one of his publishers. Hey, you guys know anything about imposter syndrome? They're like, oh gosh, yeah, it's super big. And what I've read is 70% of the population deals with it. It's a good 70%.
I could see that.
And so he goes, let me read it. I said, okay. So he introduced me first of all, he reads it and he sends me a text. He says, you're very good. And like I wrote every word in it. I didn't have AI do it. I ain't paying $120,000. I've got a friend that just did that. Paid $120,000 to have somebody write their book.
Wow.
And it's guaranteed to be a WSJ bestseller if they do that. Like, okay, well, there's a pay to play. There's a pay to play scheme in this world.
That's very interesting.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You can pay $200,000 and have your audio book be a New York Times bestseller. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Crazy. I don't have that kind of money, and I ain't spending that kind of money.
Yeah.
If I did.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
it's so that brings up something interesting because the subject is imposter syndrome, and I mean, I wouldn't want to do that. Even if I had unlimited resources,
kind of feels like going and buying a trophy for yourself.
Yeah, it's it really does.
It feels that way,
right? It just seems so disingenuous.
That's probably one of the reasons imposter syndrome even exists is because everybody looks up to these like CEOs and these big companies, and they're like, oh, I'm so far away from that person. I'm so far away from being perfect like that guy. That company's everywhere. How's that company everywhere? But then you have all these paid systems. You have paid directories. You have paid awards. You have paid announcements.
Paid awards.
Yep.
You guys know it in the.
Yes, we do.
I mean,
yes, we do.
Paid books.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. I was always so idealistic as a young guy when I was like your age. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So British Aerospace was one of my clients, and we had done this big trade show. And they were giving away a really beautiful set of golf clubs. Now, I suck at golf. Swing tragic.
You should call your friend Brent.
Yeah.
Brent golfs.
He loves golf. He would laugh at me.
Yeah.
I would make him cry. But they had this raffle for this beautiful Callaway, set of golf clubs and everything. And they went through all the things. There wasn't anything random about it. They went to the head of flight ops for a company here in Charlotte.
They're just trying to meet the right people, giving away the right gifts.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, like, but believe it or not, there is still integrity out there. But just realize that if somebody's like, hey, best-selling author, blah, 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 maybe. But there was probably some promotion behind it.
Have you seen the Fortune magazine stuff? So you have to qualify to be in the Fortune Fortune News, but you have to qualify plus be a member. So you have to pay to play. So you can qualify and not have any announcements on there whatsoever. You can be above someone who is on there in business size, profit, employee count, HR, whatever. And if you don't pay that membership, you're not in it. once I saw all that, I was like, oh, this entire world's fake. You just gotta fake it till you make it.
Sometimes.
And the whole fake it till you make it just adds to the imposter syndrome. The problem is you might fake somebody else out, maybe. A lot of times they can tell. But you might fake somebody else, but you ain't faking yourself out.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so it just keeps building, keeps building, keeps building.
I think imposter syndrome sometimes, I think in a healthy atmosphere, imposter syndrome wouldn't be necessary. But I think when I first started my business or our business, it's almost like you had to have imposter syndrome 7 years ago for like at least the brief first start. Because like everybody around you is going, you don't know much about marketing. How are you going to start a marketing company and sell all these big businesses? Who are you going to sell X to, Y to? And you're like, oh, I don't know that stuff. And then I start thinking to myself, but everybody else who starts a marketing company, they don't know crap either when they first start. I'm no different than those people. I'm gonna make it happen. But then you got to go to your first customer and have a great conversation with that person and help them the best way possible. But that's probably the least amount of service and quality of execution that you deliver in your entire company as your very first two customers.
Yeah, well, that's true. But you just said something that is it's actually weapon number 4 in this one, which is focus more on serving somebody than how they perceive you. Now, I had to learn that the hard way, and it's in the book too. But if we get our eyes off of ourselves, like you guys are too young, but go back and see if you can find 30-something, which was a television series, and it was about 2 guys that started an ad agency. And it was really cool. And
Well, that sounds eerily familiar.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so I was 30-something. I was 30-something when we built this ad agency, and we had taken a place kind of cool like this. There's an old chili factory, and we turned it into an ad agency. It was really cool. But one of the episodes, it was like, oh man, when I did my first television commercial, it was the exact same thing. So this guy, it's his first commercial, and he's the art director, copywriter combo, right? He is just sweating bullets because he's faking it like he knows what he's doing, and he realizes he doesn't know jack squat. He doesn't know what he's doing at all, and he's burning other people's money, and like, holy moly, this better work, all that, right? And I'm like, Jennifer, my wife, that's exactly how it feels. Now, if we focus like, are they going to find out? Are they going to see that this is my first one? Blah, blah, blah. It just keeps building the anxiety. But if you turn it and you go, and I wish I would have known this back in my 30s. I really wish I would have. Just focus on serving them. If you're intent on delivering something right, you're removing all that chaff of, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is my first one. What happens if I screw it up? Because there's something about that. Now, you don't have to necessarily go, whew, yeah, this is my first baby delivering. I hope this works. I hope that baby cries. Whew. You don't want to do that. But if you focus on serving them, you're going to get past that first one.
But focus on serving them, you should have done your research before anyway, so you should be at least somewhat ready to rock.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's another important part is like hone your craft.
Oh yeah.
And admit that you're never going to reach expert. Now, when I see people experts at this or that, I'm like, went out and bought that trophy.
We've been going 7 years, probably a couple thousand customers, small and big, and we still learn something every day.
Every day.
Absolutely.
That's it's funny you should mention that. Chris and I joke around a lot, but we had very interesting foundations of our company, but one of the things that we discussed all the way 7 years ago before we even had our articles of organization signed, which I guarantee you he has no idea where they are. I know where they are, but he doesn't. But we were talking about how we always had to have a student mentality. We always had to be willing to learn what we didn't know and kind of jump in the ship and go on that voyage type of thing. And I mean, to Christian's point, we still every single day we learn something new. By the way, I about had a heart attack this morning. We both had a scary morning. His dog got out and was found, so all is well. All is well.
Been out overnight.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a baby. We have a 1-year-old, and the dog must have, like, as my wife was walking out the door to go get dinner. You know how you like, put your back against the wall and you turn and you move the baby through.
Right.
So he must have slipped by her ankles, but he goes with us unleashed all the time places. So he usually just goes to the car. But I'm betting it was the perfect storm. I bet he walked out, snuck behind the ankle, and saw a squirrel or something.
Sure.
Took off while my wife was putting the baby in the car, and then my wife was probably gone when he came back. He didn't know what to do, so he got picked up by one of the neighbors like 2 roads over.
Really?
And thank God for next door.
Yeah.
That's where we found him.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Carson is good. So
Yeah, He's
every
actually he's in
Yay,
daycare.
Carson.
He's at daycare right now with the dogs.
yeah, he needs to be in timeout, I think. But and then
In the
then,
naughty chair.
right, and he'll place too, which is cool. Like you can point at something.
Yeah,
like
that was at
and
like
he'll jump
8:40
over.
this morning, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Wow.
right before the show. So I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but I'll say it on air. So right before coming to the show here, I logged into Facebook to check some of our ads and stuff, and I logged in and it said your account is restricted.
Oh, no.
You can't advertise anymore, and for us that would be
That's death.
catastrophic.
Yes.
That'd be
That'd be
catastrophic.
A lot of
Yeah.
accounts.
Yeah, that'd be catastrophic. And so I was like,
Yeah.
hang on, I can fix this. And so it's like, can you verify? It says you need to verify yourself, right? Which I have to do every year anyways. But it's like, can you get this? Like, can you verify this card number? Typed it in, and it's like, okay, you're good. I was like, what? Why do you have to make it so dramatic, Facebook? Like you're.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
They've been
it was
restricted for life.
yeah, it was like just a combination duo of failure and things. But anyway, it's funny how things like that work out. That they just it's something so simple
So
that
we haven't even got to your company yet.
yeah.
So
Let's talk about your company. Yeah.
Well, before we do that, I got a funny story.
Oh, please do.
About being restricted.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So this is it's a 13 Pro. So
Okay.
I'm behind the times, right?
Yeah.
But a year ago,
1 gen, 2 gens.
I was like, all right, I need to upgrade because it was a 12 Pro. I'm like, time to go 13. And Spectrum, love them sometimes not. So I bought the phone, paid cash for it, and they sent me a different SIM card. I think is what the deal. Yeah, they sent me a separate SIM card. Well, what happened was I lost my phone number. They took my phone number that I'd had for the last 20 years.
Oh, jeez.
It's a
It's like
216
destroying
area
your
code.
brand.
It's yeah. I mean, so we moved from Charlotte to Cleveland, Ohio in 2002. I'm like, well, we're going to embrace Cleveland, Ohio. Well, we did for 13 winters, as long as we could.
Winters.
So I went to a 216 area code, which
That was a very specific
Cleveland.
season you mentioned there, by the way.
It's 13 winters.
Winters.
It's been snowing up there already.
Yeah.
Well, so they lost my thing. Well, guess what? 2-factor authentication.
Mhm. Oh no.
I'm off.
You're making my anxiety go up right now.
I'm off of LinkedIn. I'm off of Instagram. I'm off of everything. I'm off. I can't even log into my own systems at work.
Ooh.
So, going through the customer service channels that you go through, hours a day for multiple weeks that I still can't get in. And guess what? I'm 100% commission. I'm the only partner that's 100% commission at my firm. So if I don't sell, I don't eat.
Right.
Period. I'm like, what in the world? Because I'm in the escalation zone in the machine of Spectrum for a long time, but nothing is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get anybody to give me a straight answer. Like, what in the world? How does this happen?
Yeah.
So I used to be the drummer for Forest Hill for a long time, church here in town, and a guitar player that was also like a worship leader. He works at Spectrum and he's a tech guy. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm at wit's end. I can't log into anything that has two-factor authentication. I mean, even my scale, my smart scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know how much I'm weighing.
I don't know how much I weigh.
I've probably gained 4 pounds of stress.
So I said, is there any way, like, I got to get a hold of the CEO, period. He didn't have access, but, and I said, what about his secretary? So I had about 10 combinations of the CEO's email address that could possibly work. Boom. MacGyver. I hit him, and within 24 hours, and I also hit his secretary, his admin, because admins keep the calendars for all the CEOs, period.
Right.
They are the gatekeepers. Sure enough, within 24 hours, I had my phone number back.
Wow.
But it was over 2 weeks.
Oof.
I was screwing around with that.
Oof.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. That's
Next time, just upgrade your current phone with a new phone, and it'll literally auto-populate no
Yep.
new SIM card.
yep.
No reason to stress.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
it was like
Now you literally
horrific.
put them side by side.
Yep.
And it
just-
says picture this. You put a picture over it,
Yep.
and it transfers all data over.
Well,
and that is why I'm a Verizon
that
customer
happened.
for life.
Well, and I was Verizon too, and Spectrum uses the Verizon network, and I'm happy with Spectrum, but it's like, man, and I'm not just trying to just bash them, because all companies have their own issues, but man, and the bigger you are, the more difficult it is. So, nonetheless, we'll segue to BGW CPA.
Yeah. That was
Because
quite a story.
I couldn't do anything,
yeah.
but I'm still meeting with people. But like, man, because LinkedIn has been a very important, like, it's a relief valve for me. Like, I get to speak about what's important to me, and it's been a halo for our company, because I had never even heard of BGW before I joined there. We're 80 some people, but I'd never even heard of him. I was doing seminars with other CPA firms in coaching CEOs. Like, when I was coaching full-time with my partner, Robert Fish, who's a very good coach, I was doing this with other CPAs, and then I get invited to be on a speaker panel on culture at BGW. I'm like, who's BGW? But they called me, and they said, hey, we understand you're really big into culture, and I am. Like, that's, I'm big into cultural compatibility assessments with companies that are acquiring companies, because that's the first thing that blows up a deal, but the last thing that the CEOs are talking about, or the quant jocks. Oh, well, this makes so much sense. It's going to be fantastic. And then it blows up is because culture. So a CPA firm is asking me to come and speak on culture on a culture panel. I'm like, whoa. So I go in there, South End, and it's got this big room that will hold 50 people. I'm like, this is amazing. Well, then I see on their wall, they had the Vision Traction Organizer, because they use EOS, like if anybody's read Traction.
Oh, yes. Like nine of our podcast guests have brought up EOS.
Yep.
Yeah, it's effective. And I see their vision or their mission, and it says to make a difference in the lives of our teammates, our clients, and our community. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? Because in 2003, I read a book called Purpose Driven Life, and I wrote my purpose down for the first time. And at the summation was to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God, and to make a positive difference in the lives of others. You can do these other things, and I've been burned dramatically, like probably $1 million worth of losses from people that have brotherized me that said, yeah, I want to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. And while I'm picking your pocket. So for me, the thing is, did I make a difference? Did I make a positive difference in the lives of my children? Like, my wife and children know me better than anybody. And if they say, oh yeah, well, Gary's public persona is really amazing, but let me tell you, this guy is Attila the Hun. If there was that incongruity, I'm not looking for perfection anymore, because it's unobtainable. However, I am looking for humility and like, did I make a difference? Did I actually do something that benefited somebody, or am I just a bag of hot air spewing stuff and creating these images that aren't reality?
Mm-hmm.
So that was for me. I'm like, dude. And I love working with privately held businesses because I've been in 2 publicly traded Fortune 500s. God bless them, but they are not the economic engine of this country. It's guys like you. It's guys like...
We certainly try to be.
Well, there you go. But I mean, seriously, it's people that are saying, I want to do something. You can't do that in any other country, and not as freely as you can here.
For sure.
And a lot of people just take that for granted, and I get sick of hearing people talk about, oh, well, capitalism is bad. No, it's not. If you want to look and see how socialism works, or fascism or Marxism works, it doesn't work good for everybody except for the people in power.
I saw a mural that you would love. I'll try to find it and send it to you. But it's a mural somewhere in somewhere in Europe. But anyway, it's a giant picture of Karl Marx, right? And it says, today would mark Karl Marx's 400th birthday. Number of countries that his idealism has successfully helped, 0.
Well, yeah.
That's it.
And that's the whole point. And so I love Charlotte, North Carolina. I missed it for 13 long winters. Every day. Every
next,
day.
like, Game of Thrones season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The winter's coming.
Now, I love the people that I met up there, and I had some really good experiences, and I had some crushing experiences.
And they can come down too, right?
They all park it at Lake Norman. Like they come down 77, they're like, woo!
Yep.
That is a beautiful lake.
Yep.
And then they just park right there.
And they create traffic for us.
Hence the expensive traffic lanes.
Yep, that's
and
right.
The toll lanes.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, you can't get rid of those gray skies up there. It's like, man, and the taxes are high and all that. But man, there's something about, and Charlotte is a great place for connecting. Like, this is a very tight-knit community. But I heard Hugh McCall say many times, I had the best boss ever. She just retired from Bank of America. But on my first day there, and I wrote about it, 7.9 million people read it on LinkedIn. 7.9 million people read this. But when she welcomed me to Nations Bank, and it turned into Bank of America while I was there, but she said, welcome to Nations Bank. We stand for 3 things: do the right thing, teamwork and trust, and have a passion for winning. In that order. And she gave me some of the idiosyncrasies about Mr. McCall, like, do not call it Nations. It is not NB. It is Nations Bank. Oh, okay. We are more red than blue. Okay. like stuff like that. If he pulls you over in the halls, like, do not BS him. Mm-hmm. If you don't know the answer, don't fake it. But he's genuinely interested. Like, he walked among the troops. He was a good leader. Well, I heard him, and she said, my job is to make sure Hugh McCall knows who you are. Your job is to make sure I know who your stars are. Hire your replacement and never be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room. That was the summation of my meeting with her. I knew what our core values were, and she was my advocate, and she had one person between her and Hugh McCall, Amy Brinkley. That was it. I had access to Hugh McCall because of Helen Eggers. And I heard him say many times, I want Charlotte to be a world-class city that's a great place to raise a family and grow a business. Now,
I think we're getting there, by the way.
We're getting there. So I'm glad you said that. So Colin Pinkney, who's the chaplain of the Hornets, he's a good friend, and he runs the Harvest Center. He's actually doing a lot about situationally homeless in the city, which is a huge problem. And upward mobility is a huge problem. So I said, and he's African American. His dad was 82nd Airborne. This guy's a stud. I said, Colin, do you know Hugh McCall? Because he needs to know you. This is right before COVID. And he said, I've met him, but like he wouldn't know me. I said, he needs to know you because his number one passion is about upward mobility and affordable housing. Like that's a very important thing for him. And you're actually doing something about it. Like it's not just, oh, hey, let's sing Kumbaya and let's raise some money and hopefully we'll do some stuff. Like, no, you're actually in the trenches and you're actually getting stuff done. So I reached out to Mr. McCall. His secretary got us on the calendars for in the fall. We go up and meet with him, and he's got the round. It was in Foul Furious, and he had hand grenades all around. Like the most coveted thing at Bank of America was a crystal hand grenade. He gave away 100 Waterford crystal hand grenades, and they signified doing the right thing, jumping on the grenade to do the right thing for your teammates or for a client. So like it was hallowed. And he had these hand grenades. And so I recalled that story to Mr. McCall, and I said, hey, I remember you saying this. I want Charlotte to be a world-class city that's a great place to raise a family and grow a business. I said, if you look around, you've really, like, your corporate humility, because we had people in almost all of those towers uptown, but he didn't even have the name on any of them, and I think reluctantly put it on the tower. But there was no logo by design. That was kind of his thing. It was about Charlotte more than it was about Bank of America. And he said, yeah, but not for everybody. Not for everybody. We're not there yet. I mean, this guy's in his 80s and he's still
churning and thinking about it.
Yeah. We're still not there yet, which is what I really love. And so what I love about what we do, it's not about taxes, quite frankly, and we're good at it, and we help people save a lot of money. And we say we'll help you save money, make money, stay out of trouble, and have fun. And we're serious about all four of those things.
Yeah, that's a cool. By the way, for those of us, our listeners, that was your tagline for the firm, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you repeat it one more time? You said it quickly, like it was
save money,
save money,
make money. So saving money is like tax strategy.
Right.
We're really good at it. And the reason we're really good at it is because everybody else, or many people, are really bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, well, you got your CPA. They're super conservative, and they're not great communicators, so they never talk about the stuff that's available within the ethical and legal guidelines. We are never going to push those. But there's a spectrum. But most people self-selecting the most conservative thing possible, and they don't have the communication to talk with you guys. Hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about structuring your company this way? Have you thought about taking your pay in this way versus that way? They don't do those conversations or go into the depth. So that's saving money. Making money. We weren't all that great at, like, how do we do that? So we're the only one in the world, I believe, that owns a Sandler sales franchise.
Interesting.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So why we do that? Well, because we've had a Sandler coach for the last 12 years, Jim Dunn. We bought his franchise because we wanted to integrate it to help our companies that we serve grow their top line, because they've really helped us with, now I'm not in this category of high S, high C in the DISC profile, I'm high D, high I, but most people drawn into our industry, high S, high C, so steadiness, compliance people, more introverted than not, and they don't want to talk about selling. We don't like selling either, but you can have conversations to help people.
Yeah.
And so that's make money, stay out of trouble, keep them from hitting tripwires with the IRS. You don't want to do that. Don't play with the line. You better be buttoned up. And sometimes, rarely, but sometimes we find people that come to us and they're like, hey, we're frustrated with our CPA, and it's usually because they weren't responsive and they weren't proactive. That's the number one reason. And we found some where they were in danger zones, like, we need to address this now, and you need to come clean. And usually it was inadvertent. They didn't know. If somebody's deliberately doing something like that, we're like, nope, no room in the inn over here, man. We ain't going to help you. And then the final thing is having fun. Well, how do you have fun? You should be having fun in business. Well, how do you do that? Quit having so many roads lead to you, the owner. Have the right people around you, and do the stuff that you were designed to do versus what you think that the title requires. So those are the things that so they could change the tax code tomorrow and say, we're just doing a flat tax, mail it in on your postcard. We'll still be in business because we help companies do that. And America needs you and us, independently owned businesses that are the risk takers. The bureaucrats are not the risk takers. For somebody
Boy, don't we know that.
like really, so you're making $200,000 a year and you're now worth $86 million. How did that happen?
Right, yeah, that's...
And it wasn't creating a job.
Yeah.
It wasn't risking your own salary and putting it on pause. Hey, honey, don't go buy those Christmas gifts because, cash flow is really tight and we had to make payroll. And so, we're the ones going without. Guess what? That's the glamour of owning a business.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I wish people understood the actual risk though, because I think people would be less scared of it. I think it's riskier to become an employee.
I do too.
Than to become a business owner.
I do too.
And I think it's riskier in the beginning to be a business owner.
Yes,
but it's riskier near the end to be an employee. So you become less risky as you grow as a company. So if I open a business tomorrow, I have no salary, I'm dying, I'm starving, I'm grinding for a couple contracts.
Yes.
After that, I'm now at the living wage, and then I'm grinding some more. I'm growing. Sure, I'll hit some risk platforms here and there. But as an employee, the day you start is your safest day. Then as you get raises, you have a bigger target on your back. Are you hitting the responsibilities?
Boy, isn't that the
you
truth?
have a skill level. Now you're making $200,000. Well, you better not mess up. It's a lot of money they can take off their top line, their bottom line.
Oh, absolutely.
And then as you get into your 50s, now, okay, oh man.
Oh, dude.
Should I really be paying this person anymore? Like,
right.
They're making $200,000 in their 50s. I have 40 of them. We're probably double stacked on responsibilities in that role, like, because you're probably working for a pretty big firm that has extra weight. Like, that's risky.
You are wise beyond your years, Christian.
Oh, God.
In spite of what Reese says.
That is it. Well, Mr. Frey,
I really appreciate
Excuse me. On that happy note, no. We are out of time, though. I feel like we could just sit here talking to you forever.
That was a funny comment.
We didn't even, that was a funny comment. We didn't even get into F3, which is unfortunate because I did want to talk to you about that. But
we'll get into it Sunday. I'll come by Sunday.
There you go.
Come on.
Even better.
Where y'all out?
4:30 p.m. Myers Park High School.
There you go. There you go. But I do want to cast off. We usually try to ask something funny or thought provocative at the end of our show. This is where I stall too because I try to come up with a question.
It's all on you, buddy.
But now that you guys have given me a hard time at the end,
I gave my great insight.
Yep. Excellent insights. What would you say? I got you. What would you say is the toughest F3 workout that you've ever done and why?
That's a good one.
Well, I'll just throw it back to our 82-year-old guy named Money. And
for those of us, for our listeners, F3 is family, faith, and
fitness, and fellowship.
Fellowship, that's right.
Started by Special Forces Green Beret litigator named David Redding here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there are thousands of these peer-led workouts all over the world now. But it started here in Charlotte, North Carolina, because he said he was a sad clown. He had the mask on the outside, happy face.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah.
And on the inside, he was miserable, and he needed fellowship, and he needed meaning. And so, Money, I will call on Money to do 10 to 15 minutes of, we call it Mary, but it's like ab workout. I said, man, we're gonna have some Money abs of steel, and everybody groans, and he will take us through. And it's funny to see 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds dropping their legs and hitting the ground, and Money's like, hold him, on leg lifts or whatever,
he's 82.
right?
Yeah.
And he's 82. So the funniest story, and this is this funny story. So Ford Nielsen, this guy that had gone through Navy SEAL Bud training 3 times, and right before Hell Week, on the 3rd time after he broke a femur on both legs twice, keeps coming back. Like, this guy's a stud. He is a stud. I do a Murph every Monday with a weighted vest, and he is one of 2 guys that has been able to hang with me. And so he's working out with us, and Money's taking us through it. And so, lactic acid buildups, it builds up the second day after. Like, not the first day, but the second day is when you start feeling it. So we do the workout on Sunday afternoons, Tuesday morning. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling my core. I'm feeling my abs, and it's good. It's a good kind of pain. I sent a text to Ford. I said, hey, are your abs barking at you like mine? And he said, oh, don't you do it. And I said, I just want you to remember, an 82-year-old did that to your 22-year-old body.
That's it. It's all about heart.
There we go.
Heart. Well, here's the money, man. Here's the money.
Hey.
Yep. Oh, did you just say that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, my God. Jinx. Well, Mr. Frey, thank you so much for joining us today. And can't wait for lunch, man.
Yep.
It's going to be fun.
I'm getting off here.